I remember everything about it. It was obviously an emotional night, a crazy night, and the day before, Rich, we always have our production meetings. So I think the Packers had come into the Bay Area on Saturday, so we're meeting with the Packers on Sunday in the early afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
They're staying at the Claremont Resort in Berkeley. So Brett comes into the meeting. It's about, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And Brett was great in those meetings. I mean, he was very expansive. In fact, occasionally he was so expansive that you would begin to drift off a little bit. So he comes in. He's sitting at the head of the table. I'm sitting off to his left, and I'm looking out a circular window that gives me a shot all the way across the bay of the Golden Gate Bridge, way out in the distance. It's a beautiful afternoon. And Brett's going on, and, Brett was so aware of what was going on, he could read the room extremely well. And he looks at me, and he says, "Don't doze off on me." And I said, No. I said, "Brett, listen." I said, "You have to understand something. I'm looking at your profile, and beyond your profile is the Golden Gate Bridge. So I've got two American icons in my view right now." So we laughed about that. Anyway, what I remember about that meeting is when Brett ended it, he said he and Doug Peterson, who was the backup quarterback and, of course, coached the Eagles to the Super Bowl championship 4 years ago, he and Doug were going to go to a very close-by public golf course and play 9 holes. And so there they were the day before the game, the two quarterbacks. They joined up with a couple of guys who were just, had signed up to play.
No way.
Yes. And Doug has a cell phone in his golf bag, and it rang. And he picked it up, and it was Diana Favre saying that Brett's father had died. And that is how Brett got the word. Now, we didn't know any of this until later on, because the next day when we got up and had our production meeting back in San Francisco, the word was that Brett was not going to play. And then we got word that he was going to try to play. And, of course, we all know what happened that night, 399 yards. I think 31-7 was the halftime score. You had Robert Ferguson and Donald Driver, and I think Javon Walker had fabulous nights. And what I remember about that game, too, Rich, is that he'd throw something up in the air, it looked like it couldn't be caught, and it was caught. It was like it was ordained that any time Brett threw a pass, somebody was going to get it. So that was the night of nights. We had all these shots of Brett on the bench, and you know what it's like. I mean, you lose a parent, and especially in these circumstances, and every once in a while you'd see Brett on the bench, and he was having a sinking spell, and he had a number of them. But then he'd come back on the field, and, of course, that was one of the all-time NFL classic games as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Michael's here on the Rich Eisen Show. And so how do you handle it? I mean, obviously you've been there and done that with so many other emotional moments in your announcing career, but you're realizing in front of you what is happening and how that must be resonating with an audience at home.
Sure.
What about you in the moment, realizing what was happening?
Well, I know that when John Madden and I came on the air, and I think one of the first questions I asked John is, "What do you expect tonight?" I mean, and John said something along the lines of, "We don't know. Nobody's really ever been here in this particular circumstance. I mean, guys have played when, a parent or a sibling has died, but under this particular circumstance, a high-profile quarterback who just found out about his father, dying suddenly in his 50s the day before, and obviously he was so close to Irv Favre. Nobody knew. Nobody knew what was going to happen. But one of the things about television, Rich, is that people can see what's going on. Mm-hmm. You don't have to embellish it. You don't have to speculate as to what he might be thinking in these particular situations. This is a case of, again, the old cliche about a picture tells 1,000 words. It's better than 1,000 words sometimes. People could see it, and you didn't have to, as I say, make it any more than it was that people could see. I mean, we all knew John and I and the millions of people who were watching it, this was just extraordinary. And you let it play out and let people have their own thoughts about it. And but don't try to go so deep into this. Just talk about the fact it is unprecedented. It's almost as if the other players, I don't want to say they played better that night, but Rich, I mean, there's some passes that normally would not be caught that were caught. So I don't know if it gave the other guys, the walkers and the drivers and people like that. And Amon Green ran for 137 yards, I think was the number that night. I think everybody else on that team ratcheted up their game that night for Brett.
Al Michaels here on the Rich Eisen Show. Outside of that, what was it like going to and calling a game in the Black Hole with John Madden? What was that like?
It was cool. I mean, it really was. I mean, John was, of course, an iconic figure back then. And that year, the Raiders were not very good. They had won the conference the year before, had been blown out by Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl, and I think they were, 4-10 or something like that.
They were
4-9 when they went into that game. So they were out of it. It was one of those games, and this is pre-flex schedule, where that game you might have flexed out of that game,
right?
Had we had the flex availability at that particular point, but we didn't. So we were locked into it because you had Green Bay on their way to the playoffs and the Raiders on their way to nowhere. So it was one of those things where it was locked in. Did a couple of games with John over the years in the Black Hole. It was fun. It was always a lot of fun to go in there, even though that stadium was next to. Well, I wouldn't say the worst because Candlestick Park gets my vote as the worst. But this was a very close runner-up.
Well, I mean, and you also had moments there too, right? I mean, calling baseball games of note.
Sure. I did.
Right.
I did 2 World Series. One in 1972, and I was the Reds announcer.
Yeah.
And we played the A's, and then the Earthquake World Series. Of course, the first 2 games were in Oakland, and then we went back to San Francisco to Candlestick Park for Game 3, which had the earthquake at 5:04, and then a 10-day delay before we picked that one up, and the A's won it. So I've done a number of games in the Oakland Coliseum, and it's the long gone, not to be lamented Oakland Coliseum because it was.
Well, I always remember.
Al, it was a dump. It was a dump.
Well, I remember doing Thursday night games there for many, many, many years, and I remember going out to the turf, and the tunnel underneath would have like the warning track dirt. They would have the mound dirt. There would just be different, and then rocks that they would have piles of different various forms of baseball necessity dirt that they would not have, and then they would turn into a football stadium. It was just, I've never seen anything like it. There's just nothing else like it.
Rich, what about the cockroaches and the tarantulas? And
I forgot about those.
Form of insect. I mean, it was an etymologist's dream under there. And it stunk too, as you know. No, that was built. It was built in the '60s, and they try to keep it up a little bit and have it. And I mean, it's just amazing to me that the A's are still playing there.
That's true. That's true. Al Michaels here on the Rich Eisen Show. Have you spoken to Brett about this night since then? At any point in time, whenever the two of you guys have crossed paths?
Through the years, yes. Not recently though, but we were in Green Bay when they put Brett's name up on the Ring of Honor in a Thanksgiving game a few years back. We brought him into the booth, in fact. And we talked to him. So yes, over the years we went back and talked about that night, and how surreal it was. I mean, that was the only way you could put it. I mean, with all that was going on, finding out. And as I say, it's an amazing story that he finds out on a golf course because Doug Peterson happens to have a cell phone in his golf bag, and then and then his wife flew out to be with him. And I think that, as I say, that morning we were getting word from the Packers that it was likely that he would not play and that Doug would play. And then it was an early game because it was a West Coast start. So the game started at around 6 o'clock. But we heard at around 3 or so, and as we headed to the stadium, that it was likely that he would play. So again, it came on the air, and John said, "Don't know, haven't been here, don't know. This is unprecedented."
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.